Tinnitus is a Greek word, it's I-T-U-S, and it means there's noise in my head, and there's things that cause tinnitus, loud sound, but right behind it is mechanical problems in your jaw or neck. Grind your teeth, you're a drummer that does head banging, you've been wearing a guitar strap or a violin like this for so long, and your neck's getting screwed up, that can cause some ringing. Medications or caffeine, things you ingest can cause ringing. Every musician and engineer assumes it's loud sound. Most likely it is, but not always.
My guest today is someone who spent the last 35 years on a mission to protect the hearing of musicians, audio pros, and music lovers alike. Dr. Michael Santucci is an audiologist and founder of Sensaphonics, a custom in-ear monitor company that's become a go-to top performers around the world. What sets Michael apart is that he's not just running a company, he's an audiologist first. That means everything Sensaphonics does is grounded in science to focus on long-term hearing health. From musicians to engineers to venue staff and even to astronauts, Dr. Santucci has been a tireless advocate for protecting ears in the most demanding environments. During the interview, we talked about the major causes of hearing loss and tinnitus, the evolution of hearing protection, the importance of monitoring sound level, innovations in in-ear monitors, and much more. I spoke with Michael from his office in Chicago. So happy to talk to you because there's so many things that I want to know about hearing. But let's start here. And we're talking about musicians only. What's the leading cause of hearing loss?
Well, in the world, even without musicians, in the musician world, it's loud sound. Absolutely the number one cause. In the world, it's still loud sound, the number one cause. So even if you're not a musician, hearing loss from loud noises is still the number one cause of hearing loss in the world.
And what's the cause of tinnitus?
It's called tinnitus. I always tell
Tinnitus.
people, well, there's a difference because itis in medicine is a suffix that means you have an inflammation and some swelling, right? Tonsillitis, appendicitis, they're all itises. Tinnitus is a Greek word. It's I-T-U-S, and it means there's noise in my head, not a disease. So people think it's a disease, and it isn't. It's a runny nose. It's an annoying symptom that won't go away, and there's things that cause tinnitus. Number one, again, loud sound, but right behind it is mechanical problems in your jaw or neck. Grind your teeth, you're a drummer that does head banging, you've been wearing a guitar strap or a violin like this for so long, and your neck's getting screwed up, that can cause some ringing. Medications or caffeine, things you ingest can cause ringing. And there's other things, but those are the major causes. Every musician and engineer assumes it's loud sound. And most likely it is, but not always.
You just cleared something up for me because I have it. I've had it most of my life, so I don't notice it anymore unless someone talks about it. But that being said, I went to the dentist, a new dentist recently, who said, you grind your teeth, right? So I wasn't aware. I'm wondering if that has some effect on it.
Could. I had a famous guitarist who, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame guy, can't mention names because I'm a doctor, but he drank the Kool-Aid like 20 years ago. He's not listening to his in-ear monitors. I told him where the level should be, and he's followed it, and he comes in for occasional hearing tests when he's coming through Chicago. And his hearing has been stable. And then a couple summers ago, I get a call, Michael, they've finally done it. My left ear's ringing like crazy. I knew it would happen someday. And I'm like, well, why the left only? He goes, I don't know. I go, are you turning things up on your left ear? No. Does the mix sound worse than your? No, everything sounds the same. Just my ears ringing. And I just went, are you grinding your teeth? And he goes, why? And I said, because that can cause it. He goes, yeah. In fact, my dentist is making me a bite guard. I go, whoa, what side are you grinding on? He goes, that side. And I go, oh, well, let's give it a couple of weeks. And sure enough, it went away.
Wow.
So it is, I mean, that's a simple example, but that's what goes on.
I have a bite guard, but it hasn't helped.
Really?
But again,
yeah,
I don't notice it because I've just had it for so long, which is,
Well, the number one treatment, it's an annoyance, right? So if you can forget about it, that's what we try to do is not demonize it. People go, oh, I'm going to lose my hearing. It has nothing to do with hearing. I have people with tinnitus that they want to commit suicide and their hearing's perfect, right? So, and I have tons of people with noise-induced, loud sound, music-induced hearing loss who have no ringing. So it's not all, it's a different thing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, okay. Let's talk about your background and how you get into this, because you were a musician or are a musician, and I assume that was a big part of your life.
Growing up, my dad was a music major in college before World War II and then had to leave, but he had his own big band. And of course, everybody and all the kids had to play something. And so the house was just a total mess of sound where 4 people practicing different things in different rooms. It was a mess, but I grew up in that world, right? And so I knew other musicians and such. And then, out of high school, I went to college. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And somehow I fell into audiology because I thought the science of sound and hearing was really interesting. And maybe my music background made that interesting. I don't know. And then I worked a couple of jobs after I got my master's degree in audiology and wasn't finding anything that I liked. And then I started doing an industrial van going into big factories and doing hearing conservation and nuclear power plants and stuff. And I thought, prevention, that's what medicine should be. Forget fixing it. Let's prevent it. And then a band came to me that I know. They just had released their first album. And it was platinum. Again, mention the name, but the singer, female, was going to quit because her ears rang after the tour, and she's an actress and she's not losing her hearing for the band. So they're like, help us. And I said, have her put on earplugs. And they go, have you tried them? And I play a wind instrument. I play trumpet. I put them on. I'm like, these are horrible. And so if you're working a jackhammer, nobody cared. You're just trying to block sound. At fidelity, it didn't matter. And so then I started experimenting around. But basically, there's a company called Automotive Research, still has the best filter. And they're here in Chicago. And then Meade Killian, the owner and founder and genius behind it, said, I hear you're trying to work with musicians with plugs. Try these out. And so I was a beta tester, and on Pat Metheny's bass player, Steve Rodby, who's also a great producer and composer, and also the second violist in the Chicago Symphony. And they'd tried a number of things, and they went, this is great. So I started writing about it and got famous because I was the only one in the world doing it. That's how it goes. So that's where it started. And that was in 1985. So it's been 40 years. And things progressed.
Well, speaking of progressing, it's one thing to work on the prevention side of it like that, and it's another thing to get into manufacturing and have a company that does that. So how did that happen?
It was never a goal, and there are times where I wish I'd never done it. But it happened because at the time, the products, the ear mode labs that I was hiring to make these products, we're using materials like vinyl that shrinks and hardens over time. And I'm like, why don't we use soft materials that don't shrink? Oh, you want repeat business? And I'm like, well, not at the expense. So nobody would make them the way I wanted them. And then I met this European guy that owned Elsia, big 14 labs over in Europe at the time. And he said, I'll teach you how to make silicone and cold cure rather than baking. So I sent my lab tech over. He learned it. And we started making earplugs here, and then we just moved on to in-ear monitors. And now, there was one lab tech, and now it's a whole lab over there making stuff every day. So, but manufacturing it's got its issue, it's got its challenges, right? And I have a doctoral degree in hearing loss and hearing loss prevention and hearing science. I don't have one in manufacturing or business administration or whatever. So it was all learned on the fly.
I have to say, I was really impressed with the number of products that you have, though, because there are so many in different categories that I looked at and I thought, okay, well, speaking of not being trained in that, you certainly, do have a flair for it.
If you understand hearing conservation, right, and how the ear works and how it gets injured, then you just have to think about ways that allows people to preserve their hearing without compromising too much of what they enjoy in music. That was the big thing. Protect your hearing and make it not only sound okay, sound better. That's where ear monitors came in, right? Oh, this is even better. I can hear more of me and I don't have to hear the drummer as much, and the crowd I can turn down, and this is a better situation. So, and it sounded better, and you can turn the volume down. That's the idea, just like the musicians' earplugs. You could wear them. They're still a compromise, but it's wearable. And I realized, being a musician, the number one concern is your performance. It trumps everything else. And I hate using that word. It beats everything else. And so, if the product you're giving them is going to interfere massively with that, they're not going to do it. They're just not. So you needed the tools. But then the problem is musicians get focused on tools. I want to protect my hearing, I'm getting ear monitors. I want to protect hearing, I'm getting plugs. Well, ear monitors are headphones, not safety devices. Plugs, even a crummy earplug, still better than no earplug, right? It always makes it safer. Ear monitors are a headphone. How loud do you turn them? So I have a clinic here. We've seen 30 to 40,000 musicians over the years, right? And from every aspect of music and every level of music, from the top stars down to garage bands. And it's an interesting thing how most people don't know much about what's going on, right? And I have a case history, and I'll say, do you wear hearing protection? And they go, yes, I wear ear monitors. And I go, oh, how loud are you turning them? They go, what? I go, well, I know that they can be used safely, but how loud do you turn them? Well, I don't think it's too loud. Oh, well, then you must be safe. So then people get the idea. You just have to bring reality in that the companies making them want to promote them by safety because they can be used safely, but people are buying them thinking that it's a protection, and it isn't. We did a study at Vanderbilt. I participated. The researcher, Jeremy Fetterman, great genius guy, works for the Navy now, but he used to be a monitor engineer for some decent bands. And he goes to Vanderbilt for a PhD in audiology. He goes, my capstone, I want to find out how much people turn down InEars compared to wedges. So this is a long time ago. And I had a probe mic system where I could put a little tube right up to the eardrum and take recordings into a sound level meter. So I don't care if the speaker's here, across the room. And the instruction to the band was turn your wedges up to what you like to play. And they'd start cranking it up, and I'd measure it at the eardrum. Now we're going to put in Shure E5. This is how long ago this was. I don't know if you know, with silicone sleeves that block 30 dB, and turn those up. And I'm sitting here going, I can't wait to show everybody they're down 10, 12 dB. 9,800 trials, 100 trials, all professionals, 98 turned it exactly the same, not even 1 dB different. The difference between all 100 trials between wedge and in-ear was 0.8 dB. Everybody turns it the same. And then you think about it, you're a musician, right? You learn timbre, pitch, all these things because you beat it in your head every day. And it becomes natural. It's part of and guess what? Loudness is another one. So you've been playing guitar at 110 dB, you put on in-ears, and guess what? You turn it to 110 because your musician brain is telling you that sounds great. And I've been told I'm being protected at 110, but that's the problem.
I saw that you have an accessory. It's a dB check. Would this be for monitor engineers?
It would be for anybody. So what we did was, it reads the drive voltage off of whatever you're plugged into. We don't care. And what it does then is, if we know the sensitivity, some of the specs on the headphone, published specs, we can determine how much output's coming out in dBA. And then we convert that, because that doesn't mean much. And then we convert that to a dose. So we used to convert it to a dose. The first band I was working with, that's how they do. It's a dosimeter, right? So in factory, once you hit 100% dose, you got to turn it down or something. So I'm running it as a dose meter. Same thing. They're listening to their ear monitors, and they're like 10 minutes in. I go, you guys have already hit 100%. And they're all high-fiving each other. I go, that's bad. That's not good. And so then I thought, time. So we converted it to minutes allowed. That you understand, right? I'm on stage. I look down at it. It says I got 56 minutes and it's a 2-hour show. Oops. You don't have to do anything, but it's like driving the car. That's what we call it, kind of a speedometer. You're going 100. At least you know you're going 100. You can go 100. So it was a device. And then it used to, the first version way back was just for Sensaphonics and Shure products, because Shure wanted to be on it. And we still do business together. Then it became, now the new version, I'm like, you can't just save your own clients. You're about protecting everybody. So all the major ear monitor manufacturers and all their models are on there, and about 6 studio headphone brands, the majors, I think. are on there too. So anybody that's in a studio or on a live stage, the monitor engineer thing, sure, they don't want to lose their hearing, but they also can take the spare belt pack on stage. And as long as the musician's not running the volume control up and down the whole show, just set his pack, plug in. You don't even need the earphones. And after the show, stop, and it'll tell you how loud his earphones were out there on the stage. So it's real easy for them to go to somebody. I think some of the problems, Bobby, are that engineers feel like the band wants it loud enough. If I say something, they're going to fire me, and there is that aspect. But I'm thinking, if you're saying, look, boss, it's up to you. I work for you. You will leave it where you are, but it's I feel I should tell you this is what you're doing. And I'd be happy to turn it down or not. I don't see the downside. I don't see how you're taking care of him. That's what you're supposed to be doing. And if he doesn't want to be taken care of, then that's fine.
Let's say some of the confusion about in-ears and protection has to do with, we slap a limiter across the feed. So we're not going to have sharp transients, and that's what hurts a lot. But that's not the case. I mean, if you have steady state for a long time, then you're still doing damage. So my question is, if you've done damage already, is it permanent?
Yes. There are temporary effects, damage, temporary. So somebody will say, let's say I get young people that haven't been exposed for very long, and they'll walk in, they go, every time I do a show, my ears are ringing and my hearing seems muffled. And then by the next day, it seems better again. That's called temporary injury, temporary threshold shift. Your hearing actually decreases, not to protect you. The nerve cells can't fire anymore because they've been beat up so hard. So suddenly your ability to hear goes down. And then sometimes you get ringing along with that. So that's a temporary, but the people I see in our clinics, it's permanent. Once nerve cells are injured, there's a lot of BS out there about regrowing hair cells and all this stuff. There is nothing right now. And we don't even know, even if you could regrow a hair cell, there's talking about 20,000 nerve fibers. They can't even replace a heart tissue, right? How are they going to replace nerve fibers that are working? When you think about it, the nerve fibers from open ear to brain are processing in 3 milliseconds. From inner ear, where they all are, to brain, it's 1 millisecond, and it's processing constantly. It's not like does one thing and it's only hearing one sound. It's hearing everything. But the issue is that humans were built with hearing. It's great we have speech and music and communication, but that wasn't the original intent or design. I think it was for survival, right? So this is a system built for a very quiet world where you could hear the amplifiers are great. You can hear a twig break a mile away and get out of there because some big animal's coming. It's also the only sense that works when you sleep. Everything else goes to bed, but not your hearing. Alarm clock, baby crying, somebody breaking in, smoke alarm, all that stuff. It's hearing. And that's why there is such a high correlation to untreated hearing loss and early dementia. Because the brain is not getting the energy it gets all the time, and even when you're sleeping. So you don't use it, you lose it, right? And that's kind of what we're seeing a lot of. And there's tons of research on that.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I asked you. The question was the fact that I've seen some research on hair regeneration and things like that, that you look at it and it seems promising. It's like, oh boy, but it's research only.
Well, yeah. And I think, it's someday that will happen. I'm old enough that I guarantee you I won't see it. I don't know. You might not either, but it's a ways off. And then we don't know about the sound quality. So we grew a bunch of hair cells. Everything sounds tinny. We don't know if it's replicating exactly a normal ear. Just because you can hear the tone doesn't mean it doesn't have some compression issues or clipping issues, or we don't even know. So I always say the best ones are the originals. And if you can just keep them, that's going to be your best bet by a long shot.
I think one of the advantages of being a musician today is there's all of this information about this available. where I think when we were starting, there was hardly anything, and you were left to your own devices.
Yeah, I was in
which is not a good thing.
Yeah, in '87, I did my first trade show, little one in Chicago, with my filtered earplugs, not the good filters. And I didn't sell one, and I got laughed at as the biggest, most ridiculous thing they'd ever seen. And then when I started working with bands, and one person would come to see me, and I'd come back to the show with them, they didn't. I go, what does everybody else in the band think? We don't talk about hearing. Nobody in the band and any band ever talked to each other or their engineers about my ears are hurting and my ears are ringing and I can't hear anymore. Don't talk about it. So it's come a long way.
I have a conversation with friends of mine that are still playing. And the conversation is, which ear is worse? And usually it's, if you're on stage, it's the one that's closest to the crash cymbal. And I think we've all agreed that that's the case. And so hearing is a little lopsided.
That happens so much. And then there's a lot of musicians with no hearing in one ear. Zero. From a tumor, a disease, a virus, born that way. You can still play.
I worked with a singer that was deaf in one ear, and you wouldn't know it. He compensated perfectly. Tell me about Musicians Hearing Clinic. How did that come about?
Well, that's what it had to be, right? That started before the products, right? And so the idea of hearing conservation is not new. It's been around since World War II. A guy named Don Gassaway invented it. He was a colonel in the Army, I think, and was saying everybody's lost hearing after World War II. We got to do something. And that's kind of how hearing conservation started. And he always said the ideal hearing conservation is when you don't have to regulate it, that people actually value their hearing enough that they want to take action to protect it. They don't have to be told they have to. But in industry, in the military, it's all mandatory stuff because there's money involved. In the music industry, there's nobody to tell you that you can't be too loud.
I think this is really what I'm getting at. Are there certain frequencies that are more harmful to your hearing than others?
The low frequencies, it takes more energy for them to harm you. Bass, right? Sub-bass, subwoofer stuff, you can tolerate a lot more. But basically, it's the overall level across the bandwidth that you have to be concerned about. The areas that get injured are in the 3,000 to 6,000 hertz range for everyone, whether it's a gun, flute, metal guitar, a punch press. Different sounds has no meaning at all. All it does is say that you've got injury there, and there is a reason. There's a couple of reasons, but the major one is that your ear canal is a tube with its own resonant frequency. And that resonant frequency is not the same, but it's somewhere between 3 and 4,200 something, and there's a peak there. And depending on your ear anatomy, canal anatomy, I've measured an amplitude, because there's a boost there, that resonant frequency of 6 dB louder and up to 26 dB louder. So if you're playing guitar at 100 dB, that octave's getting banged at 126. So you start seeing the changes there first. They spread. Rarely do you see change in hearing below 1,000 hertz from loud sound. So when you're asking the question, the area that gets hurt is the highs, but not from highs, from all sound levels.
You just brought something up. It dawned on me as a mixer in the studio. Mixers, more than anything, have problems with the mid-range, and it's getting the balance right. Well, not getting the balance right. So in other words, it sounds fine on one set of speakers, not on another. To one person, it's okay. To another person, it's not. And that's a reason right there. It's an anatomy reason. Never occurred to me.
Yeah. Well, there's people thinking, gee, if you could analyze everybody's ear canal resonance, there is no proof about this, but I believe somebody with a 26 dB peak is at a higher risk than somebody that is 6 dB peak. But there's never been a study to determine that. And then that way would be a nice way to say, what's my susceptibility? Because there's a wide range of susceptibility. I try to teach people in things and situations that they can relate to, like what's the causes of hearing loss and all of that. And people don't like to think about it, but I like to think about it like sunburn. What are the 3 factors, right? How hot is it? How long you're in it? So everybody goes, it's only 100 dB or it's 110. Yeah, but if you're in it for 5 minutes, no big deal. If you're in it for 2 hours, you're probably going to injure your hearing. So, and then there's individual susceptibility. We look at people with pink skin and red hair, and we look at somebody that's Latin, and we're going to say, you're going to get burned faster than you. But there's that same range kind of hearing susceptibility to injury from loud sound. We can't look at you and decide who. So we only find out after you've been injured. Oh, you're in the same band. I'll get a band that have been together forever. And I'm sure there's individual differences privately, but for the most part, they're all different. The hearing's different. And there's occasionally somebody with perfect hearing doesn't wear hearing protection. I don't know why. The only way you know is to check yourself. And we think every year. So hearing conservation, whether it's from music or shooting, the number one prevention strategy is an annual hearing test. Not a wearing an earplug, because whatever strategy you've decided to try or not try, we won't know if it's working or not working unless we check it every year and we see no change. And that's kind of the way it is. Kind of like a colonoscopy you got to do every year.
Yeah.
Not quite as painful or uncomfortable, I should say.
I want to come back to the Sensaphonics product range. And there is a lot of InEars that you have. Besides trying to hit different price points, what's the major difference between them?
The interesting thing is my first ear monitors were in 92, believe it or not. That was my first. Grateful Dead tried my first ear monitors in 92, and it was a modular piece, like a Shure earphone that I plugged into a rubber silicone mold. And, they were okay, but it was a single driver, and people wanted more bass and all that stuff. So I added a second speaker so that there was a passive crossover. And if you wanted to crank up bass, it wasn't distorting because that one speaker wasn't efficient enough. Those are called balanced armature speakers. That's what they use in hearing aids, right? These little square speakers, and they sound better when your ear's sealed. They sound really bad. All the bass goes away if you leak, right? The popular one coming out when InEar monitors were first out were round dynamic diaphragms, like a Sony earbud. Right? Those need air to move. It's a diaphragm. So you had to put a hole in and vent them. And then it lets all the sound in, and then you're cranking up the levels. So we made those, but then we decided this isn't good. We need to go to the balanced armatures where it sounds better sealed. And then sealing them that tight in plastic, people didn't like it. So I switched to silicone. And son of a gun, if it didn't connect with the bony portion of the ear canal comfortably and get more bass that people wanted just acoustically without changing any of the speakers or anything. People go, what'd you do? I go, nothing. I just made better contact. And so we went from there, and then people were too isolated. So we invented one with active microphones. I had one that bass players are saying there's not enough bass. We have a reference one called the 2 Max that can be used at one time it was being used on the same year touring by Bon Jovi, Sarah McLachlan. You go down the list. It was like a wide variety of types of music, and everybody liked it, right? So that's still our flagship, this 2 Max. It's a reference, beautiful sounding, comfortable ear monitor, just 2 drivers, just 2. I don't get into the driver war. It's a great way to make money and hype up the sound, but that's not. It also creates more probability that you're going to crank them too high. The sensitivity doubles, and the impedance get cut in half every time you pair them. So you turn your belt pack up a quarter and it's like 100 dB. On 2 speakers, that's only like 80. So people go, I've only turned it up a quarter. I'm like, yeah, but that's why dB check is good, because then it'll say, yeah, but it still tells you how loud it is. And you don't have to guess. So those models were done. Then I invented one. People were too isolated, tried the ambient mics in the crowd, and then I'd always see them pulling one out, which is really bad for your hearing because your brain has a binaural summation that gives you a perception of 6 dB louder than it actually is by using 2 ears. 90 dB, 90 dB, your brain says 96. Do this, take one away. Now this has got to be turned up to 96. And now you have an open ear with the drummer in the crowd, and it's starting to get into your brain and mask out this side. So now you start cranking that up, and it's getting beat up. It's like being on a cell phone in a crowded place, and you can't hear, and you cover your other ear, right? So you can hear better. So the open ear thing is bad. And so we got the ambient mics, and then I'd still see them pulling one out. It just doesn't sound right. So I put on my thinking cap. Why? They don't have local, spatial and localization cues. The drummer's here. This guy's here. And I know there's software out now that does that, except it doesn't move. So when you go and face your drummer, he's still here. You can place them, but they don't move with you, right? If you put the mics inside their head like their normal ears and use their ear pinners for normal localization, it sounds like nothing's in your ears, except you have a control over the mic levels and you can blend in, but now you've got, that's what we call it 3D. You can get everything.
Wow. Yeah, I know somebody that's working on software like that actually does move with you. It's a HRTF thing. And I don't know that he's had a lot of success with it.
Clang has done, Clang has that software that does the spatial stuff, but it's moving. That doesn't really help that much. So anyway, this was just a way, and it's inexpensive. So then we had people going, well, I can only turn the mics down. I can't turn them up. And so then we went to the next level, which gave us an app on a phone with 7 bands of EQ and all these different functions on mic levels. You can amplify, you can turn them down, and it's connected to a cell phone. You can just control the pack and do all this stuff. And that's the next level. And then DB check, of course, to tell everybody how it's safe. So everything has a purpose. It's not to put more drivers in. It's to solve somebody's problem that they don't like.
Yeah, but giving someone too much control, especially a musician, is not a good thing either. I know this from the studio where you're giving somebody, okay, here you have 16 tracks here that you can control your own mix, and 95% of them can't get it right. So the engineer has to go out and actually get a mix for them.
Oh, yeah, of course. And so for the bigger bands, and this is one of the first things when I came out with it, this guy, this monitor engineer, very famous guy, big band, huge band, goes, I'm not giving her that app. I said, you crazy? I said, why would you give it to her? What? I go, I see you have an iPad yet. She doesn't know that it downloads to a phone. She doesn't know anything. She knows she has microphones now. You're going to go on stage during sound check with your iPad. You're going to adjust the mics. She's going to love it. And it's done. Oh, okay. On the other hand, though, Bobby, here's the other side of it. I get local bands here in Chicago that don't have the gear to be able to feed everybody's mix into their in-ear monitors, right? So now they can just put in their guitar and vocal, and the other guy can put in his keyboard and vocal, but you can't hear the guitar unless you open up your earpieces. Bad for hearing. So for them, they go, this is a game changer. I feed in my stuff and I hit the mics and I hear everybody else and I can adjust just the way I want. And all they're doing is not EQing. Well, they could EQ the thing, but it's not complicated stuff here. We're just talking about really easy controls. The other thing for the people that are deaf or are really injured in one ear, I have a cross system. So they put the mics on both ears. During the pandemic, I had 3 big stars lose hearing in one ear for life. Virus, boom, dead. One was a conductor. And he goes, now I have to conduct sideways because I can't hear the whole orchestra. So now we take the mic on his dead ear, don't feed this ear. It crosses over to this earphone. So you get a faux stereo effect back again. And I had a famous fiddle player who had a tumor in his right side. They had cut the nerve. He's deaf on his right. He goes, I can hear my violin. I can't hear anybody I'm playing with. So for him, this was a big thing. I snuck up behind him. He wore my stuff for 20 years and I'm done. And he's at the NAMM show and I put this on him and I just put these on and I sneak up behind him and I went in his right ear and he started bawling right there, right? So because those are the kind of things. We're here to keep people working. That's the idea.
Yeah. Tell me about consulting for NASA, Michael.
Everything, my whole career, I'm so grateful, but I do believe in serendipity. It's all come in. Maybe I'm doing the right thing the right way or whatever. But I had a guy from the Chicago Board of Trade when they went into having cell phones instead of runners coming out. And it's loud. It's over 110 dB when they're all screaming in the pit, right? So they're trying to take cell phone orders and they got the big headphone things on and they're throwing them on the floor. And this guy comes to my booth at NAMM with a suit on going, could you make this with a microphone attached? I go, yeah. And he tells me he wants it for down there. So we started making them. I worked with a company called Knowles about that, and they're local. And NASA was doing stuff with Knowles and said, we were looking for earpieces. Do you know if we know the company? And so that's how it got started, just by chance. And then I got to go in there and I went down to Johnson Space Center with one of the head of flight medicine, Steve Hart. We're still friends. He's still down there. And I got to go into a space shuttle, real one they had parked in the place and see all the space station and all that stuff that they all had mocked up. So it was very cool. But we've been on every mission, space shuttle, and now still the space station since 99. Every mission we've been on for.
Wow. I have a story about someone that contacted me on Facebook and said, I'm going to be in town and I'd like to have lunch with you. And I'm always really cautious if I don't know who the person is. So I thought, well, I'll check him out. And I went to his Facebook page, and there he was sitting in the cockpit of the space shuttle. And I thought, okay, he's cool. When do you want to have lunch?
Yeah, right. Yeah. So I've never got to see a launch. That's a really restricted, and you got to be family, or I'm just not influential enough. But it's been an honor to do that. It really has.
I just saw one from afar. I was on a cruise, and it was leaving from Port Canaveral. And there was a SpaceX launch that went up, and they said, okay, at exactly 11:10, it's going to come back down again and land. And sure enough, it did. And there was a sonic boom going up and another one coming down. So that was a lot of fun.
I also do SpaceX.
I think there you go.
Decided to do that. But,
yeah. All right, Michael. Last question for you. And thank you for your time. This is great. I enjoyed talking to you and meeting you.
I think I talk too much, but I'm interested.
No, not at all. Not at all. It's all good stuff. What's the best piece of advice that maybe you learned along the way, or maybe you received from somebody?
My dad was a very strong person and would always tell me two things. He goes, always give it 100%. Always, because then you have no regrets. You gave your best, even if you did crummy. It's the best you could do. Never give up. And whatever you're going to be the best. If you want to be a garbage man, be the best garbage man that's ever been, right? And that was his big thing. And I think I've always followed those, but I've got a lot of people that have influenced me similarly. But that was the ones that I first came to mind was my dad.
Thanks for listening and being in my inner circle. Remember, if you have any questions or comments, you can send them to questions@bobbyowsinski.com. You can also learn all about the latest in music, audio, and production news, and find out about openings for my latest online classes at bobbyowsinski.com. This is Bobby Owsinski. I will see you next time.